Welcome to another episode of Studio Trusquare. Now I'm joined by Rolf Rauschenbach, who is a leading figure within the Swiss federal government when it comes to EID. Rolf, great having you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Please, can you give a little bit on background? Who are you? What have you been up to?
I joined the federal government 3 years ago as communications manager or officer for the electronic identity, this federal IT project, which aims at establishing a trust infrastructure and issuing electronic identities by the state to Swiss citizens and also people who are living in Switzerland and also have the right to get an EID. And obviously there's a lot of tech work involved, but in the end of the day, people have to understand it and have to use it, and it is my job to make sure to communicate the use and to get the stakeholders on board. That's my basic role. In the meantime, I have evolved to also some additional responsibilities, but basically that's what I'm doing.
Perfect. Let's focus on the EID, maybe in today's conversation as well. What brings you in that context? What brings you to DICE?
The key reason is here at DICE, many people, not only from Switzerland, but also from abroad, are gathering and are discussing in a fantastic format all the different issues involving EID, trust infrastructures, and so on. And it is clear for me to be here, first of all, to learn, because it is a complex and dynamic environment, but then also to show presence and to inform what the Swiss government is doing and how we can work together within the Swiss ecosystem, if I may say so, but also in the broader realm. I'm not sure what the percentage of foreigners is at this conference, but I think it may be half of it or so. It's a great mix. And obviously Switzerland is not an island. We have to establish something which is also usable abroad. And for that, it's fantastic to have all these different people present.
Perfect. Maybe we get later into international aspects. I would like to start with a little bit on history, on EID and where we stand today. Can you give us a rundown what has happened EID Switzerland over the last years?
Okay, so very briefly, the very important date is March 21, when first referendum took place, where an initial EID Act was rejected by the Swiss population quite strongly, by about 64%. The main two reasons were, at that time, the proposal was that not the state would issue the EID, but private IDPs, identity providers. And relating to this setup, also the privacy concerns were not really taken care of the way the Swiss population was hoping for. And since this rejection, the Swiss government has now been working on a new approach. This approach has resulted in a new law, which has been adopted by the federal parliament just before Christmas of last year. And as with any federal act, it is subject to an optional referendum. Within 100 days, 50,000 signatures are required to trigger this vote. We are now in the process of collecting these signatures. We, certain groups, not the government, obviously. And after Easter, we will know if there will be a vote or not.
You already touched on the referendum. I think many are discussing this, at least in Switzerland at the moment. What is the approach that you take now within the EID team towards the referendum?
As I mentioned, this is a constitutional right of every Swiss citizen to veto a federal law enacted or approved by the parliament. And during this phase of collecting signatures, the position of the federal government is neutral. We do not want to influence this constitutional process. It is very important for our democracy and our understanding, our political culture. So now, during these 100 days, we continue to inform. If somebody has a question, we obviously provide information, but we are not taking a position in favor or against specific arguments that are now being made with regard to this electronic identity.
Wonderful. And you're not only informing, I also know that you have been building, and you announced, I think it was last year, that a public beta will come for the EID. Where do we stand there? What is happening at that front?
Yes, so maybe just to give a little bit more context, as there was this initial rejection, the federal government figured out that probably we have to approach this whole thing a little bit differently, not only in terms of what the new product would look like, but also how we get to this product. And the transparency and participation are really at the core when it comes to this approach. Obviously, we have to follow the general rules of lawmaking and so on. But in addition to that, we have had a lot of interaction with general public, and we have already launched an initial sandbox more than a year ago. Now we are about to launch a second sandbox, or we call it public beta. It's a test environment, a public one, which consists of all the main elements, so the wallets, the trust registries, the base registry, and a few other things, so that anybody can play around with this infrastructure and start understanding how it works. And we are about to launch it. It will take a few more days or weeks, but it will be maybe by the time you publish this video already out there. And then people will be able to install a wallet, our wallet, on their mobile phone. They will be able to get a what we call beta ID. This is a fantasy identity, no legal value, but obviously you can play around it. You then can, as a verifier or issuer, integrate into these systems and start understanding how it works and also where the benefit of this whole thing lies in.
Wonderful. We already come to the benefits. What are the use cases, maybe both on a government but also on a corporation level, that you see currently being built, that you are hoping to see that in life and testing?
Yes, okay, so far we've been talking mainly about the electronic identity, and obviously this is very important, but aim at much more than this. The electronic identity is the main or the most important and most cherished credential that will be issued by the federal government, not by a private company or anything. But then, based on that and based on the infrastructure, other actors, be it public or a private actor, can, first of all, verify this electronic identity, so identify people online without any data flow interruptions, and then provides services based on that. And in addition to that, all these different actors can also issue their verifiable credentials, whatever their use case might be. But maybe so this just as a general fact or possibility. Now, to be a bit more specific, in the realm of the public sector, the federal government has launched in the beginning of last year AGOV, which is a new governmental login. For the first time, the federal government can provide this login service not only on the federal level, but also on the cantonal and municipal levels. This will not happen overnight, but I believe relatively quickly. The whole public logging infrastructure will be coming together on this AGOV system. And the electronic identity will be useful to use this. You will be able to use the EID to then log in via AGOV in a seamless fashion. And there are obviously many different logins at the moment are around, and I think that will simplify the life of everybody quite considerably. So that is the first thing. Then we are working on issuing other credentials provided by state actors. I would like to highlight the mobile driver's license we're working on. So you would get your driver's license also on the mobile phone and not only as a plastic card. Then many other credentials issued by the state are also in consideration, like the affirmation of your residency, criminal records and so on. I'm not sure how fast all this will be implemented, but the trust infrastructure as such allows that. So that is for the public sector. And then for the private sector, we are talking to a number of actors who will use the EID to verify people, to open a bank account, to get a telco subscription, to get a qualified electronic signature, and so on. I admit that all these use cases are maybe not relevant to the whole Swiss population, but each use case for a considerable chunk, and with that I believe that overall the offering is quite attractive, and we really hope that the people will like it and use it.
Wonderful. We yesterday also discussed on that there might be a combination of use cases that in aggregate make the people move and get their EID in the first place. Maybe not a single use case, just getting my proof of residency in one go. Maybe the hurdle is not, or the pain in today's flow is not big enough. But if you combine a few of those use cases, then you get the people moving and getting their EID.
Yes, absolutely, because Switzerland has the privilege to have a relatively good functioning. It's not totally analogous, but the overall infrastructure is working quite well in the short run. But we really have to move into the digital realm, and the pain points are bigger in other geographies, unfortunately. But I'm sure that overall things will move in the right direction.
You touched right now again and also in the beginning on the international aspect. So Switzerland, even though we'd like to think so, we are not an island, and we obviously have borders on at least 3 sides, and also then a lot of people are traveling, and the international aspect, not only in trade but also in like really free movement of goods, people and whatnot. How do you see the international? We talk about interoperability a lot in these conferences. Yes. Where do we stand in the international portion?
In the short run, I would say interoperability will be difficult. At least from a Swiss side, I can clearly say if everything goes well and we can launch the electronic identity in 26, I'm referring here mainly to the referendum, then this electronic identity is provided by the Swiss state will not yet be usable as a travel credential and will not be recognized internationally. We have many colleagues here from the EU. And when I listen to them, they are also very busy, and they say exactly the same. First, we have to get our act together before we can then think about what we do in terms of interoperability with our other jurisdictions and so on. So in the short run, interoperability will not happen as of yet. But the fact that we are attending the same conferences and the same workshops shows that we are talking to each other, and from a technical point of view, we are not so far away. But obviously, a few things still have to take place. And in addition to a conference like DICE, I would like to mention that within the UN sub-organization, which is ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, an open wallet forum has been created, which is a multilateral committee where all UN member states can come together and discuss all things related to credentials, wallets, and so on. Switzerland is present there. Actually, I am the co-chair of this committee for 25, and we are really pushing hard to prepare interoperability, which will come in the midterm. But if we do not start thinking about that and making sure that people are aware of things and so on, we will never get there. And if everything goes well, also we will have in July a big conference in Geneva with all the important standardization organizations like ISO and so on, but also the important open source organizations like Linux, Eclipse, and then important topic organizations like the WTO, WHO, and others who have specific needs for specific use cases in many different geographies, and which we have to address from the get-go also on this international level. And there, I believe the dynamic is really interesting, and that there is a hunger for doing things right. And also manufacturers, Google, Samsung, and so on, they are also part of this. They are aware that we have to move on, and there's no single player who can resolve this alone. We have to work together.
So the call to collaboration. So just to close off, is there anything you would like to share with the wider community?
Oh, sure. Anybody who was excited about what we have been talking about, please subscribe to our newsletter. With our newsletter, you can subscribe on it at www.eid.admin.ch. You then will be invited to our monthly participation meetings. These are online video calls where we provide you with a status of the project. Often we have also external speakers who provide also information on all the topics that are relevant to us. And it is not only in English and German, we also have in the end an executive summary in English for the English-speaking audience.
Rolf, thank you so much for joining us and sharing what you're working on the Swiss EID.
Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to the next steps.
Thanks also everyone who was tuning in online. Hope to see you next time.